So let me get this running, and then I will. Hey, something's initializing. What is this? Okay. All right. So right now you'll see something's initializing here, and once it's done, it will start having something on a web page that I'm about to bring up for you. Okay. So let me refresh. As you'll see, there is a project here called Yapsy. It's showing that it's running. Oh my god, that is like really washed out, isn't it? But anyways, the test suite for some of our tests here at cPanel is running here as a demonstration. I figured I would have that up running while I did my intro. I'm Andy Baugh from cPanel. You may know my twin brother George better. He's the maintainer of Selenium Remote Driver. I don't have anything on pause or anything like that. But cPanel's specialty, of course, is automating server packages. So whenever we heard Chad say that there was some UI server component of Test2, we were like, well, of course, we want to automate, setting this up and maybe use tests with it. But anyways, that's what this talk is going to be about. It's mostly going to be a show rather than tell, although, of course, I'll be telling a lot because I like to hear myself talk. Anyways, let's get started here. So we've got these tests running. What is going on the back end, I wonder? So we've got the client there running the tests, but on the back end here, we have status Yath UI. We have a Starman worker here hanging out. And we have Nginx also running that's forwarding to this. You can see yathui.sock. We're not actually binding to a port. And so that looks cool, but how exactly would we get that plumbed up? Since we're talking about a database app, we want to look at the server side here, or rather the files that are taking this up. So bring it myself over here and Yath UI, no, not that one. Okay, Yath UI.psgi. There we go. All right, so we have a little PSGI file that is mostly based on an example that's in the distribution for Test2 UI, and it, of course, is a Plaque app, but you can run that with Starman just fine. It doesn't really matter. I used Test2 harness UI util to get the files that would be, say, your JS, your icons, that sort of thing. I used log dispatch here mostly because I wanted it to log somewhere. Otherwise, it's just going to log standard out. Now, if you just want this up in a tmux pane or something like that, you don't need to hook up the logging. You can just run it that way. But we have it logging to logs main log, which is, pretty easy. We're using lib, and we are then using revise env here. That's going to be important a little bit later, the revise env, so that I can make the PSGI URL scheme HTTPS. That's because the Plaque app is actually going to give you HTTP resources by default, and if you want SSL on that, you'll want to rewrite that. So you can see here it mounts these directories here as Plaque directories based from that shared here earlier that we saw from Test2 harness UI util, which you'll of course want Test2 harness UI installed if you don't have that installed already as part of the Test2 bundle for this to work in the first place. So now, once it's actually mounting the app, what exactly are we doing? You see we're requiring Test2 harness UI, and we're requiring Test2 harness UI config, and in this case, I made a submodule called cPanel because, well, of course, I'm working at cPanel. But of course, you'll want to make your own subclass if you want to do something different with the config. So we do the new, and we tell it to do the thing. Let's take a look then at how a few things look here. First, let's take a look. Tail logs. Main log. Oh, well, that's going to be on the other server. Right. And for the most part, it looks like an access log, like you'd expect. Then we are going to look at yes, let's look at the config class, because that's going to be the next important part. So, Test2 harness UI config cPanel. And this itself is going to be a subclass of Test2 harness UI config. There's several configuration bits that mostly tell us how to connect to the database backend. And we have a getter sub that I made here that is mostly about grabbing the details from an INI file. You can do, of course, whatever you want to do here. I grabbed it from home config yathui.ini, use config tiny to read it, and of course then set the keys for whatever keys I have in the database section. There's a few other bits about the userland and the environment to configure, but I'll go over that whenever I'm going over the config file that I made for this. And then otherwise, you're just telling it to run the normal constructor, but with your augmented args. Now I had this other sub down here, but that'll become important later when we're on the client side of things. So let's take a look then at web templates. And I think that's where we're at now. Yes. Okay. And yes. So we're looking now at Yath UI INI. So I templated all this out with makefiles for the most part, which is why you'll see things like replace me. I'm just using sed to fix that up for my actual install process. But the database here, it's pretty normal looking DSNs for people that are DB/DPG enjoyers. User is Yath, because I wanted to make a non-root user for this. Host is localhost, of course, in your default Postgres port. And all that does is just tell us how to connect to the DB. That's basically it. The userland part, you can set this up with multi-user environment, but for the purposes that we wanted cPanel, that wasn't really necessary, and certainly if you're testing it out, you'll want to run it in the single user mode. That's certainly what Chad recommends for now. So I set it in single user mode. You can have it show user equals 1, but that's also a default, so you can ignore that if you really want to. But one thing that was kind of a gotcha that I found that I had to populate via env was Yath UI schema. There's not actually a way to pass it via the constructor, and the place where I wanted to inject this environment variable was something I would have had to override that's not the constructor, and I just didn't feel like doing that when setting an environment variable fixes the problem. So, and of course, there's two Yath UI schemas. Currently, there's MySQL and PostgreSQL, so if you want MySQL, you can use that as well. Okay, and so then next, let's take a look at, yes, went over all that. Yes, what is next? Okay, let's take a look at our runner script here. yathui.sh. So I'm not really doing much here with my runner script. I am doing a few little tricks here that make both server starter and starman play a little bit nicer with the dropping of privileges. You'll see that I'm doing the --user arg to yathui.psgi. That's because I want it to drop privs to the user when it's actually running. But there's one little problem with that. Whenever you're telling it to make this sock file, server starter makes the sock as root. So you have to chown that to whatever the username is. But after that, everything's basically good. And you can say, hey, this is running as whatever, and you're a happy guy. Okay, so next, I can take a look at the way for running this sort of thing on the client side, mostly because there's a few other things that I set up here, but that I'd rather go over how to run it in the client side, because all you really need whenever you're just trying to test this out, you could run, say, whatever your PSGI script is, yathui.psgi. You could run that manually, say in a tmux pane, and just access it via the default port 5000 or whatever for Starman. So if you wanted to just play with it that way, you don't need to go whole hog like I did here. And so let's go over and take a look at the client side for now. So you'll see I should be still running the tests. Nope, I actually finished running the tests. So let's take a look real quick actually at what this looks like once it's done. You'll see I have 34 failed tests. Yes, I certainly can. Whoa. Well, it's not exactly responsive, so that's about as big as I'm going to probably make it. But, so you can see here we have some icons. They're not terribly well labeled or make too much sense here, but anyways, the first one's like pinning it. You can see the run parameters, which is mostly a JSON object. It's not really that, human readable yet. There is a way to cancel jobs that are kind of zombie. You control-C it, something like that, just to hint to the UI, hey, this is actually done. You can open the run, which is what I'll do right now. And you'll see, now if you're opening this while it's actually running, it will stream in the results as well. And you can see it's green for the ones that pass, red for the ones that fail. And if you click into one of these tests with the open job icon, you'll actually see that, and then there should be a log or a message somewhere, but this one I think just blew up. Let's take a look at this guy. Yes, eventually you will probably see a log here or something like that. You should, if it didn't just blow up, but I think some of these tests are just blowing up. Okay, anyways, now that's done, we can take a look on the client side. What did I actually do to run these tests and connect it to Yath? Because there's two routes that you can use to send tests to the Yath UI. One's an upload route, which is through just an HTTP request. I would not recommend using that right now because it does not allow you to see the test results as they are streaming in. And instead, it only uploads a log of the test result without a pass-fail status. So it's somewhat incomplete as far as the upload route. But if you're connecting directly to Postgres or to MySQL using the database flow, then everything shows as it seems to have been designed to, and that's how Chad is using it himself. So let us go over to the client here, and let's cat Yath RC. So I have a Yath RC here that basically gives me all the options that I need to actually run it in this mode. Yath UI DB says, hey, we're running it in database connection mode. The Yath UI mode is mostly about how you want to report the results. Complete is all the results, the logs, everything. QVF is basically like, yeah, don't give me anything, just tell me pass fail. All of this is documented in the help output for Yath test once you've got the module installed. So if you want something else for the options, you can take a look at that and it'll tell you what you want to do. Yath UI project is just a name. It doesn't have to be unique, anything like that, just some sort of signifier. So if you're searching through the table with Control F, you can find what you're looking for. Yath UI DB config tells you what module do I want to tell me how to connect to the database. In this case, I'm using the same module that I use server side because, of course, it's the same logic effectively to connect to the database. And that's where let me go back to here. So if I went back to my, no, that's not it. Yes, this. So if I went back here, that's what the Yath UI config sub is for. All your class there needs to have is Yath UI config, and it delivers the same exact payload as new would have done for your subclass there. Same exact thing. I don't know why it was a different subname, but that's how it is currently. So anyways, that's basically all you need for the class that's a connector. Once you've got that, let me go back over here. So, and then YathUIDB buffering job tells you what kind of mode do I need to buffer regarding the live test results. Do I only want to upload it once a job's complete? Do I want to do it while it's in progress? Something like that, so you can control how much data you're shoving down the pipe at any given time, if that's a problem for you. I didn't really see any sort of problem with job or any of the other opts whenever I was testing it. So pick whatever seems to work for you. I was running it with like 20 workers with Starman and didn't really see any sort of problem. Okay, so now that we know all that, how we connect, certainly since I'm using an INI here, oh yeah, question?
I was going to say, I've got some test files if you want to show those.
Oh, yes, sure. That sounds like a great thing to show.
The link node.
This guy. Oh, no, there's the list of tests. But so if I take a look back in here, so we've got the linked node, privilege. Okay, let's take a look at that guy. All right, so we have a little warning here using UUID tiny for UID generation. That can basically be ignored with an environment variable, or you can install the module that makes it stop whining. But anyways, we saw, a warning here, that sort of thing. It tells us what the memory is at each of these types of checkpoints. Has a total explanation of what's going on, reasons, timings, all that sort of thing, which can be pretty interesting info. I think as time goes on, there will probably be more instrumentation that can be configured to add to this, something like that, especially because you can see like mem-peak, mem-RSS. Some people will care about this, some people won't. Some probably would want a different column, something like that. But currently that's not configurable. There's only what you see is what you get. So if that's something that would interest you, then of course, I'm sure Chad would welcome pull requests in that vein. So back.
Look at Run.js that also has the .1 example output.
Okay, so want.js?
Run.js.
Run.js. Okay, sounds good. Yes, so you'll see we have a fail with a Perl exception there. And there's a little bit of bake there, which is somewhat interesting, but yes, possibly unhandled rejections, JS errors, transition to end phase. Yeah, that's going to be a fun error to fix. Anyways, so let's go back to our console here and take a look at the we'll go back to some of the other supporting code that I did here, because of course I did tell about the client, that sort of thing. For the client config, you'll of course have a different config to connect to the DB because it's on a different host. Your DSN is going to be different, but that should go without saying. But I figured I would say it anyways. So now I'm going to look at here we go. Going to take a look at a few of the bits of supporting code. So templates. There is a yathui.service. So for your service for system D, you'll want whatever you want as a description, a target, that's up to you. Your install, again, up to you. But the main thing that we care about is that the service type is going to be forking. And we, of course, have a PID file and an exec start that's going to correspond to whatever we're setting up in our PSGI file or our runner shell script if you're wrapping it like I do. Your working directory I set to be the home dir for the Yath user because that made sense to me. And that's pretty much it. Not a very complex systemd service here. You, of course, install it the usual way. And whenever we're looking at reverse proxying this, there is a few things about the Nginx config. I'm not quite sure how involved you'd have to be, say, regarding Apache, but it mostly involves one thing here down in the location block. You'll see we're doing the normal proxy pass stuff with setting headers for x44, but we're putting proxy buffering off specifically, because otherwise the live test results will break. You won't see anything coming in. The buffering will in fact break that. So you'll want to turn that off however you're proxying it. If it's through Apache, whatever opt controls that. But that's basically it for your web server config. All you need to do is remember to not disable proxy buffering if you're reverse proxying it to the socket. And probably if you're running it on a port 2, you'll want to disable the buffering as well. But anyways. Okay, so after that, there's not much supporting code left over. There's certainly for your Postgres, I, of course, had to templatize my pghbaconf because that's very easy to forget. You basically just want to set it up to where it can be accessed from wherever you want it to be accessed. In my case, I wanted it to be accessed from an alternate machine, so I just made it accessible to anything because, well, I got a firewall at our work that prevents any sort of shenanigans, so I can be pretty permissive. Okay, and then other than that, there's not too much left. Let me see here. There was a bit that I did regarding making a makefile. You'll note it looks kind of messy. A lot of big red there. But mostly what I was caring about was ensuring that all my systemctl service was installed, that I installed the correct Postgres schema, which actually that's worth looking at. Let me take a look over in utils. PG modular.mk. So I made a submake file for that was running as the yath user, mostly so that I could import the actual schema files, because you'll definitely want to do that, otherwise it won't work at all. And that's going to be over in the Test2 harness UI dist folder, over in schema/postgresql.sql, or if it's MySQL, it's going to be mysql.sql. I don't think there's any SQLite schemas currently, but that's just what's going on with it. But other than that, there's really not much to it, other than, of course, automating it for whatever your environment is. In this case, I made a makefile tailored to a CentOS 10, well, Alma Linux 10 in this case, environment. And after that, it runs, it's being proxied by Nginx, and you don't really have to worry about it much. So at this point, I think there's not much else to go over. Yeah, if there's any questions, I would be happy to take them. Right. Okay.
Could you just re-summarize maybe the first 5 minutes?
Okay.
Try and reconnect.
Gotcha. So you're trying to reconnect the flow of hip bone connects to leg bone, all that sort of thing with the actual classes here. So what I have wired up here, we start from, say, a bin script here. And my bin script was based on an example that's also in the dist folder for Test2 harness UI, and it was yath ui.psgi. So basically all you want to do is have whatever PSGI app, you'll see I put the shebang in for Starman, but you can run it directly with Plaque, that runs fine as well. You want to make sure that, of course, you have an actual PSGI app to run. Once you have the PSGI app to run, it needs to connect via your custom class. In this case, it was Test2 harness UI config cpanel, and you're subclassing Test2 harness UI config. And all that has to do for you is tell the Plaque app here how to connect to the database. That's really, that of course is summarizing it, but yes, that's all it has to do. And then whenever you're taking a look over at the actual library script, the module itself, all you have to take care of is how to connect. As you can see, you're subclassing Test2 harness UI config, like I said. You are grabbing whatever config you want to do, however you want to do it. In my case, I grabbed an INI. You can do it however you want. You can, in fact, just hard code it if you really wanted to.
Where's the list of tests that you're running come from?
Oh, the list of tests that I'm running comes from the product for cPanel. You can get it from wherever you want, whatever test source you want. It doesn't matter.
But I think that's the biggest.
Oh, so you want to see how to actually run it? You see, I am using Xargs on the YathRC because YathRC is kind of experimental right now. There's some parts in code that are commented like, hey, put this in your YathRC and it'll run. But, well, not really. So more or less, if you have a YathRC, you want to turn it into args, basically. And so that's how you would actually get the args hooked up, and whenever you're running it, you can see it's just yath test, whatever path to test. And that can be a glob or whatever. Yep. Is that good enough? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And I of course, I did not have the time to put this, say, up on GitHub in a more genericized version, but certainly I can think about putting some more examples, or I can talk to Chad whenever I get a chance. Try to either clarify some of the examples or add some more pod, I don't know. That might be helpful for the people.
What? So obviously you're just running all the key files.
Yes.
And managing those outputs. Is there another use case besides organization of your test output?
As far as I am aware right now, it's specifically for reporting the test output. It doesn't do anything for you like, say, a test orchestrator would, like Jenkins or something like that. It's just taking the output of Yath and presenting it in a way that people can view with a UI, something like that. Now, that might be useful, say, if you have Yath hooked up to Jenkins, something like that, and then you can link to the test results there, because a lot of times your CI system, say, isn't exactly able to access the logs in the way that it wants to present the failures, something like that. That might be helpful for you. Oh, okay.
Let's say we got a daily test harness.
Yeah.
How is this going to help?
As far as a daily test harness?
So we're doing commits daily and make sure we don't break the product. So
Right.
Let's say we run test harness.
Yeah.
With part of it is T files.
Yeah.
There's some other kind of test. What if we have Selenium? So is this a good way to help us stay up to date on our harness results?
Yes, I would say so. You could definitely do that to stay up to date on your test harness's latest results. And basically, you would just want to hook it into whatever smoke or make file you have.
Sorry. Would this be compatible with using Selenium?
Yes.
Instrumentation on the browser?
Yeah, it should be perfectly compatible with Selenium or anything like that. It's.
We have actually thousands of harness tests.
Well, we also have thousands of harness tests. Yeah.
Displaying the results is a big obstacle.
Right. And certainly, I think that could help with it. Yeah. Because the Selenium test, there's nothing special about the Selenium test except for, say, maybe how you have to orchestrate the systems under test, something like that. It's not going to help you with the orchestration code, but as far as if you've got pod, or not pod, but if you've got tap output and Yath is consuming it, it can upload it. So
two killer features that at a glance Chad has not fully implemented in the UI, which, by the way, we're talking about Exodus, who wrote Test2.
Yeah.
He uses this in his day job. The first thing is you can use this to track, I have a test that's failing. How many times before has it failed? And get statistical information about, well, did it fail the same way 2 months ago? Or was it a different failure? So
right.
Understanding those patterns. The second way, which is, I don't think it's even visible, when you run these tests, if you run the test in a certain mode from Yath, it tracks every file that gets touched when you run that test. And so it will allow you to, it will report that into the Yath database. So the next time you run, you say, hey, I want to run this, and I only want to run it for tests that will ever touch these 5 files, which happens to be the files you just got done changing.
Yes, and I believe that's an option in Yath UI mode.
Yeah, can you show an example?
I think so. Let me check real quick. Let me.
Oh, okay. So you have to turn it on in the server.
No, I'm just checking the actual Yath test dash dash help.
That would be used historically.
Right,
So
so
it uses the historical information about, I know this test touches these five, or I know that these five tests touch this PM file, so therefore, you don't need to run the whole test suite, that's not gonna help, just run these five tests and you're done. So it's great for pull requests to.
Assuming no other test has been changed.
Correct, so if a test recently started touching that, yeah, you're not gonna get proper information, but hopefully the night they run will catch that, yeah.
yeah, okay, I'm not seeing the actual mode there in the help output right now, but yeah.
Are you talking about changed only?
Maybe, well,
Is the correct option, yes.
yes. But yeah, there's the summary of the modes there. So I'm still not sure on which opt there is for the files specifically. I didn't use that myself whenever I was testing this. So. Well, all right. If that's that, then I'll unplug here and leave y'all to it. But.
One more question.
Okay.
You're not going to win this question.
Oh, great.
So your blurb for this was saying that by now we have heard Chad talk about all the new things coming with Test2 and how there's a UI component to it.
Yes.
We haven't heard that.
Oh, well, you would have heard that if Chad was here.
Exactly. So can you fill us in?
Okay. Right. So.
I told you would have a question.
Right. So Test2 is having a whole raft of new changes coming in version 2. One of them is going to be the finished UI, which more or less this is kind of a preview of what's coming on the latest dev version of Test2. Of course, he's made releases and that sort of thing, so you can install it and run it just like I did. But there's also going to be a big plugin hierarchy so that you can do similar things like you used to be able to do with test builder-based workflows, where say you extended the tab parser, where you extended the job allocator, where you extended almost everything about prove, and I've done things like that before, made custom proves. So if you're looking for that same level of control over Test2, then yes, you'll be looking forward to Test2 2.0, along with, of course, the UI mode opts here. One of the things also that you can do with the UI mode is run it locally. There is simply an opt to just run it Yath DB local, so where it sets it up for you kind of thing. But I believe that option is specifically coming with 2.0. It's not set up yet, which is kind of similar to how, say, some of the JS testing infrastructures work nowadays, where it pops up a little server to show you the test failures, that sort of thing. But that was the idea, was viewing these test failures and whatever test artifacts are there in a more accessible way. And otherwise making it more extensible. That's basically the summary of Test2. So. All right. Thank you.